read-along for These Violent Delights by Gong. Since this was a fairy loot book, they have a week-long read-along that I'm going to be taking part in, and I've kind of enjoyed filming it and getting to share my opinions as I'm reading and my guesses as to what's going to happen and not having to worry about spoilers. It's very nice because I feel like I tried very hard not to include spoilers in my more traditional style overview, so it's really nice to not have to worry about that with this. That is just a warning here at the top. I will be including spoilers. I will put little cards in between each set of chapters that I'm reading, so if you're partially through the book but haven't finished it yet, if you see in that little card a chapter that you haven't finished yet, you might not want to listen to that section yet. But I've already gotten started with today's reading, so that's from the beginning, which there's a prologue, and then chapter 1, all the way through chapter 8. So this is the end of 8 and the start of 9. So I've got 94 pages in, almost 100, but not quite. The setup of the book has been pretty great. In the prologue, we get this kind of point of view / focus on this scary monster thing. Gong did a really good job of making me feel like suspense and spooked, and I was absolutely terrified of this creature. And it was a very good way to make me excited about the rest of the book. So, and I feel like that kind of carried on throughout her writing. Not only was I kind of struck by how well written and like atmospheric the book has been so far, but also how well the characters have been written. There are at least 2 characters with like, I don't know what the best way to phrase it is, not default settings. Because I frame everything in either books or video games in the kind of reimagining of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. We have Rosalind, and then we have Kathleen. They mentioned that she wears like a jade pendant, and somebody told her like, well, you better not do that. Like, what if somebody tries to take it? She's like, I would rather have people staring at that than at like my little hint of an Adam's apple. And that is all that's been mentioned about it. She is not this caricature, like she is an individual who has this trait. And I really like that. I wish more representation was illustrated like that. I feel like oftentimes in like other books and TV and movies, people who have some of these traits that are other than the default settings are portrayed as like these caricatures, and like everything that references them is about that thing that makes them different, and it doesn't need to be that way. And people aren't that way. So I really like that that's how she handled that. I also really like that she included that. I feel like the cast of characters in this is so colorful. The way that she portrays Shanghai at this time anyway seems very much a mix of cultures. They mentioned that the English are coming in, the French have their own section, the Japanese are even coming over too. And so you have all of this in China, so you have these 4 cultures mixing together. But then we also see that in the cast. Juliet goes over to hang out in America for a long time, like go to school and whatnot. So she's very Americanized. She has a lot of like American mannerisms and like turns of phrase and stuff like that. And then Romeo, who's called Roma, is from a Russian family. And it sounds like that his family immigrated over, but he was born here, or born in Shanghai, but their little gang / family is mostly made up of Russians. So you have at least 3 then things going on by default with just our 2 main characters, but then also I feel bad because I knew Rosencrantz and Guildenstern on Juliet's side, so I was able to recognize them, and then 2, her cousin Tybalt, who in this is called Tyler, probably because he's just very fiery that he also stood out to me, and maybe too, it was easier to identify with Juliet when I was in the like 6th grade and also a girl, so I remember her bits and her friends and people more than I knew like Romeo and his side of things. But his 2 cousin friends, one of them just sounds very Russian much as he is, but the other one, I suspect that he's got some Korean in him. There is a moment where he's cursing / like describing something and like complaining, and he defaults to Korean. And they say that a lot of people like if you speak more than one language, you curse in your native language. So it makes sense that if he's cursing and complaining about a thing, he would default to his native language. Regardless, that's another culture that at least has a little bit of representation in here. And then 2, there's the French culture. Like you see that represented in here. Probably because in the 20s, like lots of eyes were on France as far as like what's in and cool and stylish. So there's a lot of mention about is French in nature or whatever. So just so many cultures. Like they say America's a melting pot. Sounds like Shanghai's a melting pot. I mean, so far this person. The first time when we see her, it's just too early on into the book, and I'm like paying attention to a million other things. She'll just like lay out of the world and like what things are like and whatnot. But we wake up with her one morning and she's talking about how she's a little too late to do things the way that she'd like to. She likes to get up really early when everything's quiet. If she gets up early enough, she can even make it through her whole morning routine and like get some time down in the living room and open the windows because she loves that peace and quiet because it's a noisy house and there's not a lot of that. Yet, like 2 minutes later when she's talking to her dad, she mentions he's a man of few words and she's a girl who doesn't like silence. And I was like, that's not what you said 2 minutes ago. But I kind of chided myself after I initially thought that. And I was like, well, maybe she just means in relation to like people. And she feels very uneasy when she's sitting across from somebody and they're not saying anything, or especially if she's posed a question to them and they're not responding yet because they're thinking or something like that. So, I mean, there's reasoning behind it. I don't feel like it was a true misstep, but that did give me a moment's pause. I was like, So far what it seems like the story has been is on Juliet's side, it's getting back to like normal and feeling more at home, where on Roma's side, it has almost exclusively been investigating whatever this monster or nonsense or madness is. What is causing people to die? His dad kind of basically tells him, I don't really want to deal with it, so I'm going to make you deal with it. But that's kind of the overarching mystery. And there's a bit of a Cinderella moment where they're talking and he's like, I need to check and see if this shoe matches that guy's shoe. I need you to take me to the dead body. And they find out that it's their Cinderella. And before either of them can figure out what they're gonna do next, whether that be with each other or breaking off to do something different, they walk out into the larger area of the hospital and there are people who are falling prey to this madness. They're scratching at their own throats. Bloody and gross, but it's not too bad though. I haven't really found myself having the heebie-jeebies at any point. But that's where that chapter ends. And I am very ready to keep reading, but I'm gonna force myself not to. Stop for today, but I'm really looking forward to what tomorrow holds and what's gonna happen next. I have to wait a night, but you get to see in like 2 more minutes. So I'm back with another update. So I got to read up through chapter 16. So this is the last page and the start of 17. I'm at 196. And I gotta say, I don't know why I was in such anticipation yesterday. I don't know what I thought was going to happen other than them just seeing more people harming themselves. Because not a lot of information was gathered. A lot of the initial things that I liked about the book are still there. But I don't know if disappointed is the right word, just kind of resigned to that Juliet's sections really seem to focus on more so world building and understanding the people, like all the different people that have come to Shanghai, whether that be native Chinese people who live there or any of the foreigners who have come in. But I feel like her sections are more kind of social / almost political, whereas Roma's sections really seem to further the mystery part of the plot. Like he's the one figuring out all the real significant steps, at least from what I've seen so far. He finds out that they're bugs initially. I think that was in like yesterday's reading. In today's reading, he finds out that the bugs burrow into the scalp and there are actually like veins that are going in. Whew, that's another thing. Let me just have that aside real quick. I don't think I'm going to be able to recommend this book to actually young adult readers. I think it's going to need to be teenager and up because even just the vague description of clawing at one's throat and dying from it is kind of grotesque. But because Gong has to keep describing that, she wants to be creative, wants to say it in different ways, it's starting to get increasingly more heebie-jeebie. I'm not digging it. And there's a lot of blood everywhere. It's not fun. But I don't feel like there are really any new, other than the discovery of the insects. I was kind of thinking that it was going to be a Scooby-Doo kind of unveiling, and that the first guy who we see Juliet talking to in the first chapter, who seems very unassuming, he just wants to bring his product in. And then his son is trying to cozy up to Juliet later, and he's trying to make a match. But I thought it would be very interesting if he was behind all this, whether it be intentional or not intentional. Maybe it's like a side effect of the drug or something like that. But what it seems like like now to me, it seems like from like the madman's rantings at Juliet that what it seems like is that this guy's introducing a problem so he can also introduce the cure and profit wildly, gain political favor, what have you. That's what it seems like so far. I was thinking initially maybe it was unintentional, or it was even like an actual mythical beastie. Don't think it's a mythical beastie anymore, and I also don't think that it's a mistake. I think that we'll find that there was a guy or group behind this, because right now there are hints too that it's the Communist Party and that they're behind this. Maybe I need to read more mystery novels. I feel like I'm more invested in the mystery than like this will they, won't they, between Roma and Juliet. But I think I used up all my reading time for today, so I will literally have to wait until tomorrow to read anymore, and then I will update you then. Alright, so it's day 3 of the read-along now. I just finished chapter 24. Let's see, 25 starts on 286, so about this far into the book now. I gotta say, I'm excited to see some more movement on the mystery. I thought it was a little odd that they like inferred that the Scarlet Gang knew more than the White Flower Gang, because what my thoughts have been so far in the reading is that Roma's done the bulk of the investigation. But I guess that's just in a more scientific sense. And I see where like he was coming from, that even if you find like a thumbprint at the scene of the crime, if you don't have a thumbprint to measure it against, what good is it? You haven't really solved the case. But it just kind of struck me as odd that they kept saying that like the Scarlet Gang and Juliet knew more than the White Flower Gang and Roma, and I didn't really feel like that's the case. Because they both even had the same source to go at, but I guess Juliet was just able to go at him a little harder because she knew that like there was something going on there. Too, though, she did have the follow-up of his home address to go check that out later, and Roma didn't have that. But anyways, they make some more moves. They're working a little bit more as a team now, which is kind of nice to see. I also thought it was funny that we got the balcony scene, which is really only similar to the classic version in that he shows up and surprises her. That's the only similarity, but I was kind of looking for something like that, so that was kind of cute to see. Oh, and then I was very surprised that the live victim wasn't like a family member. I really thought it was going to be, and then Alyssa came down with it, and I was like, okay, they're going to bring her there, and then they didn't. And like, I get why you don't want your family member to be the one experimented on, but isn't that also better than no cure at all? So they find a stranger, and they finally get that to the scientist. I think Lawrence has been pronouncing his name. But I was really excited to see that because I want to see more of the science behind this, what's going on, what the solution is. But I was really annoyed that right after like examining that the end of chapter 4 is they finish examining the live specimen then unlive specimen, and they don't get to look into the cure yet, and so I was really annoyed because I was like, yes, finally we're getting somewhere, and then I was like, okay, this is it, this is the reading for today. So maybe tomorrow we'll find out more about what's going on and who did it, but we got a lot closer today, which is nice. Alright, so it's day 4 of the read along. A thing or two happened that I was really excited about this section. But I'm going to try not to keep you because I'm sure I'm going to want to talk about the book as a whole a lot more tomorrow. But the thing I was the most excited to see is that I was kind of right. The merchant that Juliet is talking to at the beginning of the book comes back into play. It's in a way I suspected. I honestly don't remember which one I was leaning more into, in that he came over with this intent and he's doing it on purpose, or he is like accidentally doing this. And it seems like it's closer to that second one. But he's not causing it. His drug is allowing, I've been calling him Larkspur, but maybe it's closer to Larkspur. But the guy who's making the vaccines is using the merchant's drug. I think Dexter Walter, something like that. He has come back into play, so I kind of feel validated / like excited that I was right. But it is in a way that I didn't quite see coming, so that's also interesting. But something that I knew was coming, that I'm excited that we got past it, but I don't much care about reading that section in particular, is Roma and Juliet they've had their smooch sesh. I knew it was gonna come. This came in the Enemies to Lovers box. It's themed very strongly around Romeo and Juliet, like, you know they're gonna kiss eventually. So that was kind of nice to see them finally have that moment. moment and kind of work up to that part that I knew was coming anyway. And that also spurs them talking about the explosion that Juliet references very early on into the book. They haven't talked about that, and he explains where it's coming from. So that's kind of nice to have that all out there, kind of have that the more personal, like, mystery thing solved at least. I really like this part of the book. It seems like everything is tying back to the mystery. There's less socialization, more just to like paint a good picture of the world and like paint all of our like casts, but more of like, okay, here's what we are investigating and we are getting closer to the mystery, like solving the mystery. So there's a lot more of that in this section. I was really happy to see that. One final note before I leave you. I was left on a bit of a cliffhanger again today, just because Rosalind has been acting a little sus. I think twice now has broached the topic with Kathleen of like, these people aren't looking out for us, or we're kind of left to fend for ourselves. And Lord Kai, the leader of the Scarlet Gang, brought up that there was a spy within like the close ranks, and I think it's Rosalind. By the way that she's talking, I really think that it's her. This set of chapters ends with Rosalind and Kathleen talking, and it just, I think, to me, becomes more apparent that Rosalind is the spy. One social mystery solved, another one is cropped up. So, but I'm excited to see how it's going to shake out, and tomorrow I get to tell you how the book ends. Alright, so it's the last day of the read-along, which means I got to finish the book. I did get a little nervous for a minute because with the last read-along, things started great, and then I felt a little let down at the end. And so even though I was excited for this and I felt like it was going to end well, I also got a little worried. But everything ended in a way that I was very happy with. Other than, I was kind of expecting this to be a one-off. I do usually tend to like series more. But the more series that I get on my to-read list, the more I can appreciate having a standalone book. I feel like it is harder to paint a good world and have well-rounded characters and like achieve something meaningful all in the span of one book. And it really seemed like that's what this was going to be. But as we got closer and closer to the end and I started running out of pages, I was like, is there going to be a book 2? And it ends with to be continued. So there will be, and I just wonder what it's going to focus on though. I mean, I feel like they hit on a lot of the Romeo and Juliet tropes already. I wonder if she's going to take one of the other Shakespeare plays, like romantic in nature, and maybe like play with that. I don't know. But I mean, I cared about the characters enough and the writing was good enough that I plan on reading it and picking up the second one. I do also like, again, there's a positive and negative to it, that I like the way that the mystery ended. I feel like I did suspect this person of at least like some of what happened, but on the other hand, it's definitely not something that the reader has all the details to be like, yeah, this is exactly what was gonna happen. And I think that frustrates some people when it comes to solving a mystery if you don't have all the like clues to do it yourself. I feel like I can appreciate that more in a solely like mystery targeted book. Whereas when it's a young adult novel with like other adventurous aspects, I don't feel like that's completely fair. I would have liked to have more hints, so I could have called it. In the end, it was my Scooby-Doo logic that won out, and I was right to suspect the merchant at the beginning of the book. It wasn't him, but it was his son. What I really don't like is like, I get why Juliet killed him. One, he probably needed to die anyway. He was doing some nefarious stuff and he wasn't gonna stop. And two, like, that's what she does. Like, she is not super merciful. She has learned that she has to kill. Like, just every now and then, maybe, you know, she's a little more hesitant than some other gang members, but like, she does, she has to kill. But he had more information. Because he even, like, we get like a line from him, and maybe there's gonna be more of this in the second book, but we get a line from him at the end where he's like, oh yeah, this like little bug from like England, and she kills him before she can get any more answers. And the to be continued is because Kathleen finds a note that says that he wrote to somebody, and like it says copy in the corner, so somebody else has this and has the instructions, but it says, on my death, release them all. So they have only momentarily stopped the problem anyway. Is it the same bug? Is it a different infestation? I don't know. But I feel like enough questions were answered that I'm satisfied with this ending of the book, but enough questions were unanswered that I think a second book it's warranted, and we'll have the answers to some pressing questions that I have right now. Alright guys, so that's it for the read along for These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I will be doing a review in my more traditional style where I focus on some different topics, as well as, most importantly, trying to exclude all spoilers. That way the video is safe for anybody to watch, regardless of how much or how little you know about the book already. I'll try and have that video out for you guys really soon.